From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Hi and welcome to She's the Boss, the show that is all about women in business and female founders. My name is Jules Brooke. I'm the founder of Handle Your Own PR, and today I've got two amazing guests. I'm so excited. I have the fabulous George McEncroe, who is the founder of Sheba, which is the rideshare business for women. And I've also got Ludwina Dautovic, who is the founder of the Room Exchange. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Hi. It is so great to have you here. I'm beside myself with excitement as I've been posting all over social media. So I've got some great questions for you. The first one, I'm going to hit you up, George, first. I'd really love to know what it is. What is Sheba Rideshare and why have you created it?
Okay, so it's an app for women to transport other women, essentially. That's what it was built for, essentially. So I built it because I was looking for a job. I was newly divorced. I, like a lot of women, didn't have an immediate go-to position. I had 4 kids in my care, and someone had said, you should become an Uber driver. So I was working on a lot of bitsy things. I'd been a broadcaster on the ABC. I'd been a writer, I'd been a teacher, and I thought, that just feels unsafe. So I registered twice to become an Uber driver, and I thought there's got to be something for just daggy mums like me to drive just other women and kids. And
why other women, though? I'm really interested to know why you actually set it up specifically for women.
Well, because I looked at the data and I saw that only 6% of cab drivers were women, and fewer than 10% of rideshare drivers were women. And I thought, why can't I just get into the front seat? Why are all the police instructions on transport for women to sit in the back seat?
Yeah.
And why can't we sit in the front seat? And at the time in the media too, there were just numbers of issues of girls being assaulted in cabs and Ubers. And I thought, this is a real problem. And then they can't get a conviction when they go to court because either there are no cameras in the taxis or there's no sound with the cameras, or, and also you'd rather prevention is better than a cure, right? So one of the things that is if you get in a car with a woman, chances are you're not going to be assaulted, and the reason we use cabs is because they're drinking. And then there's the whole issue of carrying minors. So you're not allowed to put a minor in an Uber, and you can put a minor in a taxi. And then there's no car seats in any of these other services. And why, if you're a working mum and you want to get your kid to creche or childcare or
pick them up after school.
Yeah, why can't you have someone be that person for you and pay for that labour instead of asking this idea that everyone's got a nana in the cupboard or just ready to jump out and do your childcare for you is a myth. You need someone to do that, and you want to pay them for it.
I think it's just such a fantastic service. I remember reading about it literally just after one of my sons needed to be picked up on the other side of town, and I'd sent a taxi over and they said he wasn't waiting, so they just drove away. And I was like, hang on a minute, my boy is just sitting there on his own. So when I read about it, I just thought it was such a clever idea, and I still do. Brilliant.
Well, thank you. And I think that's that female lens being applied to a problem that you recognise a problem and think, well, if we've got the biggest part of the casual part-time workforce is women, and they're not underemployed necessarily because they want more work. Or sometimes they are. They're looking for flexible income because actually lots of people you speak to say, I don't want to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning and home at 6. I do want that flexibility. I actually do want to do, school reading some mornings, and I do want to be there after school some afternoons, but I don't want to do it every day.
It's the perfect solution. And I know I use Sheba a bit, and your drivers all love the work that they do as well. I mean, they are like your best advocates because they absolutely adore you. They adore the business. They love the flexibility and the income it gives them. It's just such a great idea. So now just hold that thought for 1 second though, George. I'm just going to move over to Ludwina from the Room Exchange and ask her to explain to us how the Room Exchange works and why you thought about doing it as well.
Thank you. So the Room Exchange is a platform that's really all about helping people save money by using resources that already exist, which is time and spare bedrooms. So,
So how does it work?
Well, people or households that have a spare bedroom that's sitting there idle, it's costing them something, whether they're renting or they have a mortgage on the place. So, and a lot of the time it just sort of suffers more from pillification than it does from anyone sleeping in it. So they could utilize that resource
like
and instead of paying, I know, I read that
Sorry,
one.
it's a good word.
I can't claim it. But then, like they're paying for cleaners or gardeners or people to come and, they're outsourcing that work and it's costing them money.
Yeah.
They could utilize that room and insource instead of outsource by accessing one of the guests on our platform. And our guests on our platform, for various reasons, and they really are varied and wide, want to save money by living in an alternative type of way, by offering their time in exchange for food and or accommodation.
Ludwina, again, that is such a good idea. Like, I mean, so many people have got a spare bedroom. So many people would be happy for someone to come and have it, especially if they could do some vacuuming, wash some dishes, pick up the kids, whatever might need to be done. Again, it's just such an inspiring idea. What triggered the idea for you?
Well, essentially, it's really, it's about giving people the opportunity to help each other. And that's the thing that I love about it, particularly right now in the current climate, the times that we're in. Everybody's wanting to help someone in some way. But this is great because both sides of the equation are equally helping each other and equally being helped by saving money. So that's a primary reason. But essentially, it began organically. So I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years. And much like George, this idea was just spawned. But this idea was born out of the way that we were living at the time. So my children, who are now 28 and 25, when my eldest son left home about 6 years ago, I did what most mums do when they first experience the emptying of their nest, and I cried for a year, and then the following year,
I'm cry when it happens to me. I'm kind of like hanging out for it.
It changes things so much, and the house feels a little emptier. And so the following year, I did what a lot of people do, and I listed it on Airbnb, which I loved. But what I didn't like was the 4 hours it took to get the entire house hotel ready for a $50 a night guest. But I loved the engagement with the people. I loved having different cultures and lifestyles and values and ideas around my dinner table, around my home, so that I could invite more of the real world into my home. And that's what I love, the experience of that. So what ended up happening, I stopped Airbnb, and then organically my kids' friends were traveling. They want to come and stay, and then they want to stay longer but didn't have any money. And both Harry and I were running our own businesses from home. So I said, well, why don't you just stay, help us out a couple of hours a day, and we'll feed and house you. And that's essentially how it started. So fast forward 4 years after I got asked 3 times by friends of mine, damn, this is a great idea, where can I find someone? That sort of entrepreneurial radar fired off, and we did our research, and the data told us as well there's over 7 million spare bedrooms in Australia. That's a pretty good starting point.
That is huge. It is huge. And there are lots of different reasons, from students to people divorcing, all sorts of reasons that people would love that as a temporary...
Even wanting to save up to buy a house.
Yeah, well, there you go.
People want to save a deposit, they can save nearly $20,000 in a year.
Exactly.
I think what's so interesting, Jules, for Ludwina and myself, what really stood out is that we're both trying to solve real problems in an innovative way. And for me, it is an issue of, safety and child transportation that didn't previously exist. And I think Ludwina's saying, a supply and demand issue, but also a social fix. So, I was having a chat to Ludwina. I've met Ludwina in other contexts. And
I love that idea, 2 big female founders meeting each other.
We run into each other. I mean, I've run into several women. You do find each other over the course, especially when you sort of, we're even though we're solving sort of social impact issues, we often find ourselves at funding issues and tech issue spaces, and because we're using technology to solve these problems, and tech is a fascinating place to be. And I never thought I'd find myself in that space, but it is brilliant.
It happens.
Innovation is solving problems, and yet so much money goes towards people who've never had a problem to try and solve. And I always find that that theme emerges again and again in in the funding space and just in general, like not many very comfortable middle-aged white men, of course, they have had a lot of problems that they've had to try and solve, and nothing against them,
No, well, they just don't see it from our point of view. They don't.
Yeah, and in
they
our
haven't got the
case,
experience.
and in our case, majority of the decisions that are made around a household are made by women who primarily are doing majority more so of the housework, and the men are picking up. It's fantastic, but majority of the household decisions are made by women, and so the responsibility and the decision making process in that is coming from the women. So it's like this is a way for them to be able to have more balance in their life, be able to have less pressure. Like if they can just have someone they can ask a couple of hours a day, hey, can you just please pick pick up the groceries, or just start prepping dinner, or help kids with their homework, or even just elderly people who are lonely at home. If you've got an elderly parent and your parent lives in their home, they don't want to leave their local community, but they're lonely and you're worried about them, you can find a guest to come and stay with them. There's a number of different ways that it can work, but it's primarily driven by women.
Yeah, both of you are incredibly clever, solving real social problems, so I love that. Now, let's just move on a little bit to what is happening right now with everyone in isolation, businesses closing down, etc., etc. Can you tell me, we've got probably about another 5 minutes before we're going to go to a break. Are you able to tell me very quickly, one at a time, and I'll start with you, George, how is the coronavirus affecting you, and have you had to make changes in your business to accommodate the changes that are happening out there?
Yes, it's definitely affecting us, and yes, we've had to make big changes. We have had to manage cash flow. We had to make people redundant. We've managed to hold on to a number of people. It's been awful. Like it's just been.
It is. It's hideous for everyone. I think right across the board for so many businesses.
And you're the boss when you have to actually go through the cash flow and make, okay, how are we going to reduce spending by around 60%? And there was a vacuum of, policy vacuum of around 2 weeks, and we had to make decisions within that time. And it was just.
But you pivoted. You have done a couple of pretty interesting initiatives, haven't you? Can you tell me what they are?
Yeah, sure. We decided to release Sheba Drops, which was fantastic, and that's had great take-up. But we had to order in masks, and we've given every Sheba driver a mask.
Fantastic.
We do it ourselves, so we're the only rideshare company that's done that for our drivers. But we also had to listen to them and their safety issues.
So tell me, sorry, Sheba Drops, what is that?
So that is a service where you can have something delivered by a Sheba driver, because we also have to sit back and go, right, well, we have a delivery service. We can pivot to being a courier service with no human contact. So you can use our service to drop things locally. And if you want to go further, you can just book a driver to take it further. But we are putting a radius on that, next week. That'll be in. So that'll be within 8 kilometres. It'll just come up as so drivers don't have to look at the screen.
That's a terrific idea. Terrific idea for so many people that are stuck at home. And tell me about what you're doing for essential workers, because I think you have a really nice little offer in there as well.
We've got an offer at the moment. If you're an essential worker, you can get $10 off a ride once.
Fantastic.
So that's a great work.
Yeah, it's great because they do now. I mean, when you're tired at the end of a shift and you need to get home and you want to get a driver, you want firstly a friendly driver. And secondly, any kind of a discount has got to be appreciated at the moment.
Oh, it's huge. And you can socially distance in an XL vehicle as well. So we would love to, people can travel together. And if you want to put 3 nurses in an XL vehicle at the end of a shift, we don't think it's safe for you to be driving. We'll, stop past the supermarket or run some groceries. You just chill.
Yeah, great. And I love it that you gave the mask. So, Ludwina, how has it affected you? Because obviously people have to social distance, so you can't ask a stranger into your home at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been, like what George has said, it's just like we've just had to sort of follow what the guidelines have been that have been presented to us. And, we've obviously got Big Brother, who's Airbnb and Airtasker and, organisations like that who we've been able to, sort of follow in their lead. But with our, because people are actually coming into a home and sharing the home with other people within it, we've it's certainly not something that we can be promoting. But having said that, though, there's going to be a time very soon when the social distancing will be lifted, and we see ourselves as becoming, quite essential in terms of, that helping people save money for both hosts and guests. It's going to take us a while economically to get back up on our feet, which might require, additional work. The stress and strain that it's going to put on households is going to be tremendous for quite some time. And also, yes.
I was just going to go, it's a terrific time actually for you to be promoting it and letting people know about it, because you're right. I would say, I think it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks before they're in theory saying we're going to be let out. And there's going to be a lot of people that need to move and need to find accommodation. I know in my local Facebook group there are women who are being kicked out of their houses because it's the end of their lease. I don't even know what they're going to do about finding a new place, but there will be lots and lots of people in that situation. So it's a great service to be sort of letting people know about now.
Yeah, and I think it's important to sort of sense check as well where people are at, and that's what we've been doing. But the primary thing in terms of, when you ask a question about pivoting, one of the things that we started working on just at the end of last year is our enterprise model, and that's so it's sort of given us a time to work on the technology to finalize that, which is great. And I think a lot of businesses are sort of using this time to do the things that they haven't really had time, but the enterprise model is going to give it's going to give organisations with large member groups who've got hosts and guests within their actual community the opportunity to be able to have a private portal on our platform where they can just exchange with each other. So think of, say, women in business organisations when, they start travelling for events or for business interstate, they can go and stay with another woman in business of that same member group by being part of a member portal. And there's various different organisations that for one reason or another, whether they're corporate groups that have a lot of executives travelling that want to, really sort of develop that relationship amongst their business community, or down to, organisations where privacy or health issues are at risk. And, I'm a cancer survivor, and I know that when I went through that, it was a lot of pressure on my husband to provide all the support, the domestic, financial. We can help organisations,
that's a terrific idea.
Someone's home. Yeah, so there's a number of different ways.
And now the, surgeries, the elective surgery is going to be allowed, then you are going to have people coming out of that. Well, listen, ladies, we're just going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit you up, and I want to know your whole career, basically, how you've ended, what the windy path has been to end up where you are now. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
There are now more ways to watch Ticker. Download our apps for Apple and Android devices. We're live on Twitter and YouTube Live. And you can catch us on Amazon Alexa and Google Home. Head to the Ticker website for more.
Drop into Ticker Newsroom.
The biggest opinions, the news, and what you need to know.
And I'll be bringing you all the crazy moves from Canberra, live, right here, every day.
We want to bring you breaking news now. The analysis you won't hear anywhere else.
Because Ticker is bold business, a brand new era for news.
Search Ticker TV on the web, on the app stores, or on social media to find us.
Ben, Robin, Robbo. Streaming across the globe, Ben Norris, Rob McKnight, and David Robinson. Ben, Robin, Robbo. News, reviews, entertainment, it's the Ben, Robin, Robbo. Ben, Robin, Robbo Show. Ben, Robin, Robbo Show. The Ben, Robin, Robbo Show, Monday to Thursday at 1 p.m, right here on Ticker TV.
I want to ask you a question. How is your business connecting to the new economy, especially when you don't know what's coming next? Have a think about that. Is there an opportunity to become web famous? Are you an established small business ready to make the digital transition? They're the questions I'll be asking on my new show, DigiStyle. I'm Kylie Bartlett. I've trained and coached more than 10,000 businesses around the world on how to become socially savvy. And now I'm looking at you. Join me for DigiStyle right here on Ticker TV.
The food and drink industry is right in the crosshairs of this health epidemic, but there is a silver lining.
Hey!
I'm Wendy Hargraves, and on the brand new Bread and Butter Show, we're delving into the business of food and drink.
Chopping up finely and putting it on.
Australians have always led the way in food and wine, from our amazing chefs and restaurants to primary producers and food makers. Bread and Butter will go behind the scenes with industry leaders, find out how they built their businesses and what they're doing to survive and even thrive through COVID-19.
I'll have a vision and I'll stick to it.
Bread and Butter, starting soon on Ticker.
From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Welcome back to She's the Boss. Today I'm beside myself with excitement because I have two women that I've been watching over the years who I'm so inspired by. George McEncroe, who started and runs Sheba Rideshare, and Ludwina Dautovic, who runs the Room Exchange. So ladies, thank you so much for coming back. Now I want to know about your twisty-turny journey, which I'm sure both of you have had, to lead you to running these businesses today. And I'll start with you, Ludwina. Can you tell me pretty much from when you left school to now, what has the journey been like?
Very unorthodox. So I left school at, I'm 53, just to give some context to, you know, the timeline. But I was 15 when I left school and 16 when I left home. So, and then I spent the next 8 years working in hospitality in Sydney. During that time, I originally then? No, from Howlong, which is a little country town, 500 people just southwest of Aubrey.
Oh, wow.
So I moved,
okay, so moved to the big smoke at 16.
Yeah, 16, yeah. So it was quite a big move. I think when I reflect on it, I think that sort of move, the decision I made at that time is really the underlying part of me that sort of drives me with everything else that I do. I just kind of when I make the decision to do something, I then just do it. Love that. Yeah, so over the years of working in hospitality, it was all about sales, people, relationship building, connecting with people. I worked in a club in Sydney that had all the famous celebs back in the 80s that used to come, and because of my vivacious personality, I just got put in charge of looking after them. I won't drop names today though, but they were, there's a lot of really good stories, probably a book there in and of itself. Yeah. But then from there, when I got married, had my kids in my late 20s, and then when I was 30, I decided I wanted to make a TV show, and this was back in the analog days. So we used to record on those big super VHS tapes.
Right. For anyone that's watching, the tape was about that thick.
Yeah. Had never used a computer or touch a video camera at the time. I just decided I wanted to make a show. It was called Straight Talk, and I was talking to 18 to 25-year-olds about issues that were relevant to them back in that time. We were talking about, this is like 25 or so years ago, we were talking about gender issues, relationships, just a whole lot of taboo mental health, a whole lot of taboo subjects that was quite innovative for its time. That was on the Optus cable network. They loved what I was doing. They asked me to produce more shows. I did. I then got sponsored by Apple and Optus to create a media program.
So that's back when the iMac was kind of coming out, I guess, was it?
Before, the Big Bubble Mac. Right. Yeah, it was Apple. The Big Bubble Mac was the big thing at the time.
Yep.
Yeah, I did too. So we created a program called Media Minds, which was for grade 5, 6 kids. It ended up being run in over 300 schools in Adelaide, Brisbane and Melbourne. It was quite ironic considering I left school at 15. I was then hired by the education department to run professional development workshops for teachers of media because they weren't learning it in uni. And so that was pretty significant part of I think when my entrepreneurial sort of shift really happened, I ended up producing 3 TV shows. There was TV.com, which was all about tech back then, and also a pilot that I created called Expose, which didn't end up taking off for a number of different reasons. I just wasn't ready for it at the time. So, but Media Minds was a big thing. And then from there, I then did what a lot of people did at the time. I got trained in coaching, was one of the first lot of, life coaches to come out in Australia. And then I really got into business coaching, started a national women's business network called the Red Tent Woman. We ended up running events in women's homes. Again, it was quite innovative.
Slow down a little bit. Red Tent Woman.
Oh, sorry. Red Tent Woman.
I know you go, rah, rah, rah. Tell me, where did Red Tent Woman come from? There was a book at the time, wasn't there?
Yeah. So it was a book written by a woman called Anita Diamond, and she talked about sort of, back in the old biblical times from a woman's perspective, what it would have been like for women back then. And, they would gather in this tent for all the women reasons. And I like the idea of cross-generational women for a number of different reasons being under the one roof or the one tent.
It's lovely, actually,
sharing lives together without the differences of financial or wherever you were in your career. It was just there about supporting each other. And so that was the premise of it. And it was all about food and sharing lives. And so we ended up having events run in 4 states in Australia. That ran for about 5 years, and my business advisory service at the time was becoming very big.
Right.
I then launched in Perth, and the day we were launching in Perth, I was diagnosed with a 14-centimetre tumour on my kidney at the age of 44. So that was my
another
journey for the next
moment.
3 years. Yeah,
3 years.
So,
did it take you out of everything for 3 years, or what? I think I met you around then, actually.
Yeah, probably. Look, I was lucky that it hadn't spread outside of the kidney. So I had a radical nephrectomy, which was a 7-hour surgery with 4 surgeons, and surviving that. I was at the lawyers that morning because we didn't know if I'd survived that, but I did. And that was about 3 months after this. Yeah, about 3 months after the surgery, I started asking myself a question: what can I do that doesn't require me to look good, feel good, or go anywhere to keep my business brand alive? Because I was really worried about all the momentum that I built. Yeah. And so I started podcasting, and that was back in 2010. So
you'd be one of the first.
Literally. Yeah, I was. Yeah, one of the first B2B podcasters in Australia. So I had my $20 Logitech headset in bed, in my pajamas, interviewing women CEOs from all around the world. And I started off with Poppy King. You know, the lipstick queen.
Yeah, the lipstick queen.
Yeah, I know, I love her.
And fancy having to do that from your bed and just hoping, and thank God it was podcasting. You know, it was just like the perfect solution for you.
It was, yeah. And then Diana Williams
inspiring you probably at the same time.
Yeah, it was. And that was kind of a pivoting point, because I really fell in love with tech then. And that sort of started my love, passion for tech. From there, I became quite, you know, my Little Black Book became quite significant because of the people I was interviewing. I then started investing in tech. I wrote a book after my second surgery the following year. I wrote a book where I had other contributing authors. It was called It's That Easy Online Marketing 3.0. Yeah. And one of the contributing authors ended up becoming a very dear friend and is now one of my advisors, and his career is quite significant. And so he started leading me into the tech space. Then I started investing in tech, advising in tech, working closely with CEOs. And all of this sort of started leading me towards, you know, as an investor, I helped the CEOs of the companies I was investing in, and a lot of those people now are actually helping me with the room exchange. So it was all kind of a real logical sequence.
What a great story. That's amazing. And my goodness, what an incredibly driven and inspiring woman you are. Like, wow, that's bang, 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 really from 16 till now. You haven't stopped, and you've just been growing and growing your networks and growing your expertise and sharing it with people. So I love it. I think that's a terrific story. So George, your turn now. And you too have had a really interesting career, because I know you probably don't even remember, but 100 million years ago, I thought about setting up a morning TV show for mums and approached you to be one of the hosts. And that was when I think you were doing stand-up. So take me back to you leaving school and what happened from there that ended up with this windy path.
Yeah, so I left school and went to university and did my arts degree, and you know, I remember
the useful arts degree. I have one of those as well.
And people said, you know, I remember it was so depressing. There was a piece of paper, you know, that the toilet roll said, you know, arts degrees, please take one over the dunny roll. And I remember thinking, pretty mean, but actually I loved doing my arts degree, and I majored in philosophy. Always thought I'd get back to that at some point. And then I did a dip ed, and the day I graduated, the Premier at the time sacked 10,000 teachers across the state. So I had to go to Turkey and finish to get a job in education. So I taught in Istanbul for a year, and then came back and started doing...
Istanbul, hang on, go back a minute. Istanbul for a year? How was that as a female? That's astounding to me that you went and did that.
It was pretty tough. I wasn't an ESL teacher or anything. I didn't know how to teach English as a second language, and I seem to have taken more English out of the students than I originally started with. But anyway,
you probably made them laugh along the way.
They're gorgeous kids, and they're still in touch with me. I loved young people, and I came back and started my master's in bioethics because I'd worked in disability for 8 years, and I was very interested in that. I'd been the palliative carer for boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, so I really found that very interesting that time. So I worked in that space and then started my master's in bioethics, and then I got very interested in a group of women in Melbourne who were looking at war crimes and trying to establish rape as a war crime because it hadn't been considered a war crime by the War Crimes Tribunal. And Australia was part of the very first, it's still ongoing, the War Crimes Tribunal, which a lot of people would know is the only tribunal that exists outside of there being it's not a crime court set up by the victors like the Nuremberg trials, so it's ongoing. And my friends and I...
That's a really interesting area. I guess the fact that you'd been overseas is what made you had that kind of global look at what was going on with the war. Amazing.
Yeah, so my students were going off, Turkey has the second biggest standing army in NATO, and my students had compulsory military service, so they went off to war. And of course, I knew students who had to go and fight. So I was also fascinated that rape was seen as just a part of what happens as
one
war.
of the byproducts. Yeah,
that's right.
Awful.
It's very damning of men, the idea that, well, of course you go to war and you can have your cow being stolen is a war crime, but rape isn't. And that, I thought, no, that's wrong.
Yeah,
that's wrong. So,
shocking. Well, I have to say, I wasn't expecting the bioethicist and moving into that. So what an incredible career even to then.
Yeah, so I wrote a chapter for a book called Women and War, and then I started doing more writing for The Age. So I have my 4 kids. I came back to Melbourne. I got a job at a school in Melbourne, and I was the welfare coordinator there for a few years. And then as I had my kids, they wouldn't let me go part-time, so I gradually, my childcare became more expensive than my teacher's wage would cover. So I ended up being hung for a sheep as a lamb, so I had 4 kids.
Wow.
And then I started doing more writing, and then I thought I'll start doing comedy.
Hang on a minute, let's go back up again. How do you go from writing to I want to stand up on a stage and risk people throwing things at me?
Well,
and that just seems like quite an interesting right angle to take.
I guess you're writing and you're putting yourself out there, and people are saying, what you're writing is quite funny.
Right.
And then the laziness in me thought, or the efficiency master in me thought, if I had to write, I have to keep writing new things all the time.
Yeah.
But if I do stand-up, I can say the same things over and over again.
So stand-up became very attractive all of a sudden.
I loved comedy because I thought this is where people have to tell their truth and their vulnerability becomes an asset. And I liked that. Yeah. And I thought, I've had to have a perhaps me with all my kids in the room. What have I got to lose? And what can happen? There's not a patient left on the table. It's not like I'm waiting for a heart-lung transplant the worst thing that can happen is people don't laugh.
Yeah.
And I can't bear my own cowardice. I hate regretting not having a crack.
Oh, well done. Yeah, that is that. We're going to talk about tips in the last part of this, and that's a huge one.
So I had a crack, and I did okay. And then the next time I did okay. And then I did so okay that I got a phone call from a person from Austereo who offered me a job to do breakfast radio in Brisbane on Triple M.
Wow.
And I moved the family up to Queensland, and we lived there. And then I got a job to do Mix FM in Melbourne.
What sort of hours were you doing? Was that working with the kids? Because obviously moving to Queensland would have been fabulous, I can only imagine, especially after Melbourne to have all that warmth. But did breakfast, I mean, you hear some of the announcers talk about having to do early shows and they hardly see their kids. Did it give you that flexibility?
It was hard. You have to either get really fat or really fit, and I decided to get really fit.
Right.
And I was up at 3 a.m. The torture was that my baby had just started sleeping through the night.
Right.
So Toby had just started sleeping through the night, and then I got a job in breakfast radio, so I was up again at 3:10.
But having obviously been well practiced by that stage.
I just want me to sleep. That's okay. So I just went with it, and then I had to start, doing that, and that's what I did, and I loved it. I loved doing Tradio, but I thought, how did they end up getting a sort of a feminist, outspoken, person like me on doing Tradio in Brisbane, helping the workers get up and hit the gateway every morning. And I remember getting in trouble for using the word avuncular on air one day.
Why? Because people wouldn't understand it.
what the hell was that, McEncroe? Why are you using a word like that? Nearly drove my car off the road.
Oh, that's funny.
But that's okay. I had to interview people like Wayne Bennett about the Broncos, and it's just I just had to put
Rather you than me, I don't know anything about sport. So what happened after that? So you were on radio up in Queensland, and you're now down in Melbourne running a ride share. How did that happen?
So then I got divorced, and then I had a brain aneurysm that got picked up, and a bit like I was just relating to Ludwina's experience. I had these terrible headaches, and that was tough. And I went to the GP, and they thought I had trigeminal neuralgia, or you're stressed, you're having a marital breakdown, and you've got 4 kids, and one's doing year 12, and she'd seen a guy get shot, and it was just like this year of hell. And but what actually I found out happened was I had these scans, and this doctor said to me, "Is only some of those professionals can, they're very focused." And he just said to me, "See this here? That's an aneurysm. We want you in theatre tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Please go and prepare your affairs." And
thank God they caught it, though, George. I mean, a lot of people don't come out the other side of an aneurysm. So
that's the thing. And tragically, one of the mums, Stella Young, a dear friend of ours, dear comedian friend of mine, died of a brain aneurysm, and another mum from my school died in a similar way that year.
Oh my God! So it really was the year of hell for you.
Yes, it was
absolutely
the year of hell. It was absolutely.
There's a funny thing about fate or the universe or whatever, that when you're down, it feels like it's totally okay to just keep kicking you. I noticed that a lot, and you've really got to pull yourself out of it.
Man, it was tough. It was hellish. And that's why I think when I came up with the idea of Sheba, I was driving down Punt Road.
Yep.
It was the 19th of April, 2016. I'd seen my
5 years ago, almost today.
Yep. And I thought of it, and I'd love to do a podcast on ideas you've had driving down Punt Road, because I refer to it as by another name. Driving down Punt Road. And
yeah, my mum used to say that too.
And it occurred to me, I thought, why don't I just do this? And then I put my money in, and I called it Mum's Taxi originally, and other people went, "Oh my God, it's the lamest name. I'm not mum. I'd like to drive for it. Why did you call it that?" But then other friends of mine said, it tells us exactly what it is and what you're going for and the work you're trying to get it to do. But anyway, then I called it Sheba because I'd studied theology, being a good
Queen
Catholic.
of Sheba.
Yep, and I love the Queen of Sheba because she challenged the wisdom of King Solomon, and she went and said, "You know what? I know you think you're always right, but I'm going to travel by myself and tell you a few
fantastic.
things."
It's a fantastic name for the service.
Thank you very much. But yeah, that came to me in a dream, which also had its own biblical kind of resonance as well, I think. So that's my life today. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, what you, honestly, both of you are so amazing, particularly that you started young and just kept going and kept going. And I think we all get, we're all of a certain age, and so we've all had that terrible year or whatever that just comes and everything just keeps on coming, like a wave of bad things keep happening to you. So the resilience that you've shown by coming out of it and starting your businesses is just incredibly inspiring, and I'm sure it is for all the people watching. Now, I'm going to stop us again now, and then we're going to have a little break, and we'll come back, and I want you to share some of the things you've learned along the way that we might be able to help other women who are setting up their own businesses or running their own businesses. Back in a tick.
There are now more ways to watch Ticker. Download our apps for Apple and Android devices. We're live on Twitter and YouTube Live. And you can catch us on Amazon Alexa and Google Home. Head to the Ticker website for more.
Drop into Ticker Newsroom.
The biggest opinions, the news, and what you need to know.
And I'll be bringing you all the crazy moves from Canberra, live, right here, every day.
We want to bring you breaking news now, the analysis you won't hear anywhere else.
Because Ticker is bold business, a brand new era for news.
Search Ticker TV on the web, on the app stores, or on social media to find us.
Ben, Rob and Robbo. Streaming across the globe, Ben Norris, Rob McKnight, and David Robinson. Ben, Rob and Robbo. News, reviews, entertainment, it's the Ben, Rob and Robbo. Ben, Rob and Robbo. Ben, Rob and Robbo Show. The Ben, Rob and Robbo Show, Monday to Thursday at 1 p.m, right here on Ticker TV.
I want to ask you a question. How is your business connecting to the new economy, especially when you don't know what's coming next? Have a think about that. Is there an opportunity to become web famous? Are you an established small business ready to make the digital transition? They're the questions I'll be asking on my new show, DigiStyle. I'm Kylie Bartlett. I've trained and coached more than 10,000 businesses around the world on how to become socially savvy. And now I'm looking at you. Join me for DigiStyle right here on Ticker TV.
From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Welcome back to She's the Boss. I'm Jules Brooke, and my two guests today, honestly, they've just told me the most incredible stories of how they've overcome adversity and got to where they are today. We have George McEncroe, who's the founder of Sheba, and Ludwina Dautovic, who's the founder of the Room Exchange. Now, girls, we've only got the last third now, and I think what I'd really love to do would be for you to share some of the things that you have learned along the way that we might be able to use to help other women in business. Let's start with you, George. I know you have probably learned stacks along the way. Can you give us some tips of things that have happened to you that you learned from?
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone's different, I suppose, but I guess the big take-homes would be to trust your own instincts about things and to be prepared to have really brave conversations. I think the things that I regret most is when I have not been as courageous with myself. So I've lacked courage. So I had never run a business before. So I was bound to be, vulnerable to people's advice. And my natural position was to be deferential when I perhaps should have been more aggressive. Not aggressive, but more questioning.
Sticking to your guns and
more willing to say, my instinct is that that's really not right, and ask them to prove their credentials before immediately resigning from my own position. And I think that's a big learning from me. But I think a lot of women think, and this is something that I talk about in schools quite a bit as well, is to say you don't have to be the consumer to be the maker. Because one of the thoughts I had a lot when I was starting this position was, well, how very dare you? Who do you think you are? The bloody Queen of Sheba. But also, everything you look around and see has been made, has been taken to market, has been manufactured, has been labelled, has been shipped, and why women so often let men do that instead of taking that on themselves.
Yeah.
And don't be the subject of Instagram, be the maker, be the designer, be the innovator. And getting access to capital has been hard.
Yes. I think that's common for, I would say, almost every female founder out there. The guys seem to scoop up 99.9% of the money. They're just, even the investors often cannot see the value in the things that we're suggesting to them because it's not their world.
No, and you'll need to have, 5 times as much data, that much more security around it. And I think going in knowing that, I mean, your idea might be ordinary, but if you need to have a couple of guys in suits to assist you just to get the cash, and always be watching the cash and have your numbers triple proved, triple validated, however you have to do it. But I think don't lose hope, be brave, and back
and
yourself
stick to your guns, I think, is for me. Don't get talked out of it, because a lot of people will come in with their 2 cents worth who think they know everything and go, oh, I don't think you should be risking that, or that's the wrong kind of business to do.
And they're projecting their fears onto you. And that's another thing. People will project their anxiety onto you. And there's always someone who will say, why would you do that? And so you can always say, well, why wouldn't I?
Yeah. And what have I got to lose?
That's right. So if you're not asking for them to put in any money, just tell them to shut up and make you a cup of tea. And I'm not asking you for your money, so shush. Shush now, and if you want to be my friend, put the kettle on and shut the hell up.
As they would like to say to us, sit back in your seat and be quiet. Let me see if Ludwina's got a couple of tips, because I've realised that I have been chatting so much with you. We haven't talked about how either of you have raised investment, and I'd really love to touch on that as well. So Ludwina, sorry, I keep saying it the wrong way.
It's okay, don't worry about it.
Can you tell us some of the things that you've learned along the way that you think might help other people?
Yeah, look, I think this is a theme of today between both George and I, and it's resilience. Yeah. And when I talk about resilience, I often mention the reference points that we have created along the way, because for each, as I shared my story of my journey, every single thing that I had done, whether it was easy or whether it was really challenging, has given me a reference point of the fact that I have done that before to some degree.
True.
And so
keep
moving forward, because I have some place to say, well, I did that back then. In my case, I'd say, surviving cancer, 14 centimeter tumor. Yeah. It's a big reference point for me. So I think, well, if I can beat that, I can do, what can't I do, right? So that, to me, finding your own reference points and actually noting them down, I think is incredibly important, because we do have weeks. Last week was a very, very difficult week for me. And, and I took 2 days where I just went, I just need to shut down. I gave myself the time. I painted. That's my kind of mindfulness process. I paint a lot. And I even had one day where I said to my entire household, I'm going to be silent for 24 hours. I'm going to turn my phone off, and I'm just not going to talk to anyone, because I just needed to go internally, right?
I don't think I can shut up for that long, but I love the concept of it.
Yeah, it's actually really good. I loved it. And it was just, it was great for me to sort of regroup, remind myself of my reference points, that this too shall pass. I just need a couple of days, and then Monday's a new day and I'll be fine. So finding ways that you can help yourself to get through those really difficult times, and remember that you've been there before, is incredibly important. And the other thing is that when people say no to me, I just think I'm getting one step closer to my yes. And so don't make something, you can make anything mean what you want it to mean. So when I did my first raise, which is what you want to talk about shortly, it's like I pitch and pitch and pitch for 8 months, and I kept saying, great idea, darling, come back in round 2. And also I was naive at the time, and I didn't get it until one day I did get it, and I thought, why would I go back to you in round 2 when you said no to me in round 1?
You missed your opportunity, mate.
Yeah, and if they're all saying no, well then, okay, I'm just going to hire a pub in South Melbourne. So I hired the Honey Bar, the top floor, and put on my own pitch event, and I signed a deal a week later. So
amazing. That's a really amazing idea. Yeah, well done.
Yeah. So when people give you a no, it's just, well, okay, well, they're not right, or they don't understand it. But when George and I were talking yesterday, because we're needing to raise capital again as well for growth. And I had this thing in my head, who is that one person that is going to love this idea, that can see that it is right, that is looking for this?
Right.
Finding that person, right?
How do you find that person, though? How do you Google them? I mean, how do you find that person?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You LinkedIn,
Google. Yep.
LinkedIn, Google.
And I think the other thing is you realise that no one is as passionate about what you're doing as you are.
Yep.
And no one knows it as well as you do. And I think Ludwina's approach is perfect. It's how I raise capital. I held small, intimate gatherings, so the friends and family events, and friends of, and they also, you don't need tire kickers. You don't need people to come and tell you what could be doing, or so many people.
Exactly. And most of the time, they don't even know what they're talking about. I mean, people will give you the benefit of their wisdom when they don't have the wisdom.
Mansplain their business to you. Or the other freak subset are people who are coming to invest, $50 in your business, so in the hope that they can get a $200,000 contract out.
So you ended up going to Virtual, who I have met with recently, and I know that it's the guy from Possible who's met up with another guy, and now they're doing equity fundraising, and I know that you have raised, I think, the biggest amount with Virtual. Is that right?
Yeah, we broke the record. We raised $3 million, but again,
how much did you raise? How much?
$3 million. And then we raised again later on in the year for, I think we raised.
And how many investors did you have?
About 2,000, and 94% of them were women.
What a lovely, lovely idea. So you now know that also you've got all those people with your back who are invested in making sure that this works for you.
That's right. And, you know, again, all these VCs who said, we just can't see it. Just can't see it. What can't you see?
Yeah, what bit are you missing?
Month on month, and just can't see the problem. No.
That's so funny, isn't it? Because every single woman that I've ever spoken to and explained how it works goes, oh my God, I didn't know that existed. That's perfect. So we get it straight away.
Straight away.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have to say to these guys, have you ever sat in the backseat of a cab? And they're going, why would I do that?
Yeah.
I just want to throw in there too. You know, it was guys that said yes to me, like my VC fund. And I got to give them credit for it. They, you know, when everybody else was saying no at the time, they came in and they saw us and they said yes, and they've been, you know, supporting us through this. So you know, I've got some great male advisors as well, and I just kind of want to throw in that, you know, I don't want.
We're not a men hating here. No.
No. I've got a really solid, you know, group of, you know, male voices in my life as much as I do female, and I could not do this without them. And I think that what we're trying to say here, we haven't sort of been specific about it, is that where the majority of the money lies is traditionally what I find it's been with people who invest usually in things above or below the ground, so minerals, property, you know, things that you can see. And what George and I have created is, it's not a tangible thing. It's not a thing, right? This is using resources that already exist, right? And the value is in the people who are using it and the service that it provides. You know, the environmental impact and economic impact of what we're doing is massive. Yeah. And that's where the future is heading. And so what we need are people who can see that and can see that, you know, right now, people need to be investing in things that are going to have a strong impact in the lives of people moving forward. Economically, this country is incredibly challenged, and we need to be solving those problems. And George and I have already created solid tech, solid business structures. We've both raised capital. We've both invested in and backed ourselves. We've both proven the concept. Yeah. We've both had massive media around it and massive support. We're not newbies. We're not just coming into this industry now saying, hey, we've got an idea.
That's
we raised on that.
And that's the reason I got you on, because you are both, you're there, you're doing it, and you're right there doing it on the ground, and I love it. Now listen, you won't believe this, but an hour is up. So I have absolutely loved speaking to you. You are both brilliant. Can I just say quickly, George, how do people find Sheba? And then I'll do the same with you, Ludwina.
Sure. You go to www.sheba.com. .au, and we're there on the interwebs.
Yes.
And we have just released XL vehicles, so you can book a month in advance and use a preferred driver. So if there's a driver you particularly like, you can book her as many times as you like. And yes, you can book as many car seats as you like. So,
and I'll just add that there is an app in the App Store because I have it on my phone. Just like Uber.
Android, iOS, and go if you like. We've got an office you can call if you have a problem. So it's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Ludwina, how do people get hold of the Room Exchange or find out more about how they could either take a guest or be a guest themselves?
Yeah, so the Room Exchange, that's with the letter X, exchange.com. And we're going to be offering for hosts and guests to use our platform for free for a limited time to help get through COVID-19. So that will be a limited number for a limited time. We haven't finalised, but I just made that decision. Yeah, before we came on today, I wanted to actually have something that we could offer. We also have a podcast exchange revolution where we talk to a lot of people. We're going to be talking to George on that soon. And and then we're also right now
Revolution, so that's the podcast.
Exchange Revolution, and we're just looking to partner with various different organisations and groups too, who, where we can support each other.
Cool. Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone knows where they can get hold of you. I hope they both use your services to death. I think that they are brilliant, brilliant ideas. And I'm absolutely thrilled that you came on the show today. So thanks very much. I hope all of you viewers have enjoyed it as well, and we will look forward to seeing you next week on She's the Boss to tell you more about some great women.
There are now more ways to watch Ticker. Download our apps for Apple and Android devices. We're live on Twitter and YouTube Live. And you can catch us on Amazon Alexa and Google Home. Head to the Ticker website for more.